Was pushed by winds, but 5 years of drought, and then we had an El Nino winter, which a lot of rain occurred in the Kern River Valley, which grew the grass, and that grass is that finer fuels which contribute to the spread of fire. Obviously, you know, you can't take a match and light a tree on fire, but if you take that match and put it in the grass, that's what catches on fire because it's finer fuels. So we had the drought, we had high temperatures, low humidity, and wind that day. So all of those factors contributed to the destruction of this Erskine fire. So the fire began on June 23rd, late in the day, almost 4 p.m. at 3200 Range Road. And in the Kern River Valley, it's a partnership with fire agencies responding to wildland fires. Kern County Fire Department, Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Forest Service, we're all sending firefighters, fire engines, bulldozers, hand crews to the scene. In addition, CAL FIRE was sending air tankers. Our closest air tankers are out of Porterville, which is a short flight to the Kern River Valley. So we were all responding, and we were operating in the highest mode of response possible. Again, this was late June, hot, dry summer day, low humidity, high winds, so everything was sent to this fire by all the agencies. The Kern County Fire Department arrived on scene first, and our initial attack fire captain reported the fire about 2 acres and rapidly spreading. The fire was spotting up the hill, and we immediately began suppression efforts. Again, Forest Service, BLM firefighters, and fire engines were arriving on scene, the hand crews, the bulldozers, air tankers, helicopter, everything that we have in our firefighting arsenal was arriving on scene, and our firefighters immediately went to work. Now, where this fire started, it is in the area what we call Cook's Peak. It's right next to the Kern Valley High School. And we often have fires on Cook Peak. We've had several fires there over the years, and usually the fire burns up to the top of the peak where it flattens out, and our air tankers, our bulldozers, our firefighters get up there, and we're able to contain the fire at a couple hundred acres. And this is a fire that we fought several times before, and a lot of the firefighters that were on scene of the Erskine fire, they've been on the Cooks Peak fire. And that was an expectation that we would be able to contain that fire, as we have with several other Cooks Peak fires. Unfortunately, again, 5 years of drought, a large crop of grass on the ground, the trees are dead, the vegetation's dead, it was hot, it was dry, and it was very windy, and the fire exploded. And within minutes, the fire was over 200 or 300 acres. It was burning across the mountaintop and dropping into the communities on the east side of Lake Isabella. And we began receiving reports that structures were on fire. Remember, we had a fairly large response of air tankers and aircraft, and they were reporting the fire continued to spot out in front of us. Over 2,500 homes were threatened within hours of the fire starting, and as I said, over 30,000 acres were burned almost due east, driven by that hot wind that blows up the canyon and then blows out towards the desert. If you talk to veteran firefighters, they will tell you some of the fire behavior that they observed that afternoon, that first night, even into the second day, was nothing like they ever witnessed before. And these are veteran firefighters who have fought wildland fires, not only in Kern County and the state of California, but all over the United States. Because it's a team effort, we go everywhere to suppress these fires. And that fire burned out into the desert, out into Kelso Valley. And typically our desert fuels are different than the fuels we have in the mountain areas. They're thinner and you're able to contain wildland fires in the desert a lot easier. But that fire roared out of the mountains down into the desert floor and was burning with as much intensity as it was in the mountains. So the Erskine Fire was definitely a fire that was driven by all of these factors. The fire continued to burn and actually made a turn south and burning in the Kelso Valley area, and eventually it burned into the Paiute Mountain areas and burned into the Paiute fire burn scar, where we were able to put a lot of resources up on top and keep the fire out of Erskine Creek and finally contain the fire. Over 2,500 firefighters were on scene. And again, let me stress, it's a team effort in California to fight a wildland fire. So we had Kern County firefighters, we had Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Forest Service, CAL FIRE, and local government fire departments responded for structure protection. And these fire departments came, these fire engines, these firefighters came from throughout the state of California. Again, truly a team effort. We train on this pre-season, we work on this during the fire season, and we work on this in the off-season to make sure that we are a finely tuned machine to fight wildland fires here in Kern County. When the final damage was tallied, the most significant part of this is 2 people lost their lives as they were overran by the fire. 2 people lost their lives. Over 280 homes totally destroyed. Totally destroyed. That's everything inside the home, everything totally destroyed. Hundreds others damaged. The people who live in the path of the fire were in evacuation centers for weeks. It truly impacted our citizens in the Kern River Valley. But it also impacted the fire service. One Kern County firefighter, he lost his house in this fire as he was fighting the Erskine Fire. He watched his house burn down. The Bureau of Land Management, their firefighters are on scene fighting the fire. One of their firefighters' homes burned to the ground. The U.S. Forest Service, same story. Firefighters on scene fighting a wildland fire, trying to save citizens' lives and their property, and their houses are burning down. Our firefighters didn't know if their families got out as they were battling these destructive wildland fires. It was truly a devastating fire for the community and our firefighters. Shortly after the fire began, Kern County Fire Department Fire Investigation Unit responded to the fire. This is standard protocol. Our Fire Investigation Unit responds to these type of wildland fires in an effort to determine cause. The scope and magnitude of this fire, the fire investigators put together a team of experts. Other fire investigators from the U.S. Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management, CAL FIRE, all participated in the investigation efforts. And they've worked over the last 6 months to determine the cause of the fire and put together an investigative report that is quite exhaustive, if you will. And it's taken 6 months. It's taken 6 months of hard work by the fire investigators to interview hundreds of witnesses, to go through the process of eliminating the normal causes of wildland fires, such as lightning. They actually looked back at the previous 24 or the 30 days prior to the Erskine Fire to see if there were any lightning strikes in the area, and there were none. So they were eliminating causes that we typically see on a wildland fire. Vehicles, maybe a hot catalytic converter into the grass. There was no access by cars. The area was secured, and they worked through the process to eliminate all causes of the fire. The Kern County Fire Department's Fire Investigation Unit, assisted by CAL FIRE, the U.S. Forest Service, and BLM, has determined that the cause of the fire was an electrical line that was in a tree that over time the insulation was wore down as the line rubbed on the tree, and a catastrophic electrical arc occurred that afternoon, and hot molten material dropped into the grass, the vegetation, and the fire was started by that electrical line. That is a private electrical line that was on private property. It's not Southern Cal Edison or PG&E. This is a private line, and the evidence that our fire investigators saw, that they examined with technical experts, it was very clear that this electrical line suffered a catastrophic failure, and the molten material from the explosion, which was verified by witnesses, the hot molten material landed in that vegetation, and the Erskine Fire began. And again, the conditions were ripe for a significant wildland fire that afternoon. Hot, dry conditions, windy weather, a lot of fuels, 5 years of drought, and the Erskine Fire, over a period of 2 weeks, did devastation never before seen in Kern County. So the investigation has been completed, and the land ownership where the fire began is actually on Bureau of Land Management's land. The land was actually leased from the BLM to the California State Fish and Wildlife Services. So the Kern County Fire Department is now transferring command of the investigation to the Bureau of Land Management, and they will be going through the reports, and they will be the lead on the investigation from this point forward. I would be remiss if I don't talk about our citizens in the Kern River Valley and some of the recovery efforts that are going on. There is still people that are homeless in the Kern River Valley because their home was totally destroyed by the Erskine Fire. Working with the State Office of Emergency Services and FEMA, we will be putting 27 manufactured housing units in the area that was destroyed by the Erskine Fire, and these are 27 families that will be receiving a house, a new house, and this process will begin after the first of the year, and that's a good thing, that people will be able to get back into their home, because remember, their home was destroyed. Everything that they had was destroyed. They literally escaped with the clothes on their back. Recovery efforts will be long, though. It's a long process as these people try to get back to something of normalcy. Just remember these people in the coming years, because it's going to take a long time. And I know the fire agencies, again, we suffered loss too, and our firefighters on the ground, you know, were there fighting fire in their own backyard. So there's a lot of things with the Erskine Fire that we need to remember, and we need to prevent it from happening again. This is one for the record books, and it's not anything that we want to ever occur again. Thank you.
Chief, are you taking questions?
Turn it over to the PIO.
Yeah, the chief's available for several questions.
So I have a couple of questions. Being that it was a private line, what was it being used for? And is that owner ultimately responsible for this fire?
So the line is a private power line. from a building to another building. This is not a major power line such as from Southern Cal Edison or PG&E. This is a private power line that's past the meter. Ultimately, the Bureau of Land Management is going to be going through the report. They just have received the report last Friday. So they will be going through and reviewing the report, and ultimately a decision will be made by the Bureau of Land Management on that.
To recover costs, you mean? To recover costs? Just to be clear, are you guys going after the landowner here? Any possible charges to be filed here? Or trying to recover any monetary damages here?
Yeah, good afternoon. Gabe Garcia, Bureau of Land Management. So yes, we're at this point. We got it last Friday. We're reviewing the report. You know, obviously it's several hundred pages long, and so our team is doing that as we speak. So there's a number of different possibilities we can go forward from here, and it'll probably be several weeks to a month before we make a determination on what direction we go as far as going after damages caused by the fire.
And what's the name of the owner?
We at this point we don't, you know, we have that information right now, and we're going through that process, and that information will be released at a later date.
Because two people died, are you also pursuing criminal charges, or are you looking into deciding whether or not you're going to file criminal charges?
That'll be something that we'll decide after our review.
Do you know if it was residential or commercial? You said?
You know, that's something we're still looking into, exactly what the property was being used for.
Was the line up to code the way it was run, and also was it the wind event itself that actually caused that line to fail with the tree rubbing on it?
Yeah, so you know, that's one of the things that obviously during our review we're going to take a look at the code by, you know, if it's up to code, and all that stuff would be looked at during our review of the report. Like I said, it's going to take us some time to kind of go through that, and then come up with a determination on our next steps from the Bureau of Land Management perspective.
Did that homeowner or business owner also lose their property in the fire?
I don't know.
So how common is this then? I mean, if it happened with this one particular incident, and you know there's lines all over the place up there, what's being done to ensure that these lines are safe?
Right now, we have just finished our investigation and have determined it to be a power line. So now we need to go and look at how we do our defensible space inspections, which we typically do in the spring. Make sure that we are looking into all aspects of it to prevent this from occurring again. And again, you know, the entire defensible space program, where we're making sure that there's no firewood up against the house, there's no pine needles on a roof. It's kind of the total package to make sure that we prevent fires from occurring and homes from being destroyed in the wildland fire.
Now this is
Okay, we'll take about 2 more questions.
This isn't an unusual. I mean, the incident exploded, but this isn't an unusual fire cause, is it? I mean, I see you trimming trees all the time around the power line. It's unusual.
It's not an unusual cause of wildland fires. Again, lightning, vehicles that get into the vegetation and their hot catalytic converter will set a fire. We typically see fires on the grapevine where vehicles are going uphill, they're operating, you know, at a load, and hot carbon goes into the grass. We see fires caused by railroads. So there's a lot of different causes of fires, and our fire investigation unit, in conjunction with the other agencies, ruled out all of these other causes of fires. I mean, they even looked at, was there lightning in the area, and there was no lightning within the past month. So a lot of different causes of wildland fires. This was caused by a power line that had been in a tree, and the line had been rubbing against the tree.
Chief, have you got a cost of the fire? How much financially, how much does this cost you guys overall, taking into account everybody that came down here? Ballpark figure as to
the total suppression cost for the Erskine Fire is approximately $23 million. That is for the suppression cost. Again, the fire occurred on local lands, state lands, federal lands. We did receive a FMAG, which is a Fire Assistance Management Grant from FEMA. That pays 75% of the local government's response to the wildland fires. So the costs will be shared, state, federal, and local, with FEMA playing a big part into reimbursing local governments for their cost of fighting the fire.
We'll take one more question from someone else, and then we'll wrap this up.
We're still going through the damage assessment report. Again, over 280 homes were totally destroyed by the fire. We have additional homes that were damaged. We have hundreds of vehicles that burned up. The rehab costs, you can just imagine, the power lines, the power poles that were all burned down. All of those costs are continuing to be totaled, tallied. So we don't have a full damage assessment report completed at this time. We continue to work on that, and then we'll determine the total amount of damage from the Erskine Fire.
Okay, that'll be all. That'll conclude the press conference. Thanks, guys, for coming out.